ever feel like life is dragging you under? Like you're gasping for air, you can't breathe because you're drowning in expectations, self-doubt, and the never-ending pressure to be more, to do more, to prove more. And some days, just getting out of bed feels like a competitive sport. And if that's you, I see you, I applaud you, because life isn't easy. It throws us curveballs, roadblocks, and detours that leave you questioning everything. But here's a thought. What if your life only lasted for 24 hours? Because that's all a mayfly gets, one single day, and yet it doesn't waste a second questioning its worth. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't wait for permission. It just lives fully, unapologetically, with everything it has. And you were born against 400 trillion to 1 odds. So you weren't meant to hesitate. You weren't meant to shrink. You're meant to live. But if you keep holding back, if you keep postponing your happiness until you feel ready, something's gotta change. Today, I'll show you exactly how to build unshakable self-worth, not by chasing validation, not by faking confidence, by trusting yourself like your life depends on it, because let's be honest, it actually does. And at the end of this video, I'll share an opportunity to go even deeper inside the resistance reset. Because you've been waiting for a sign, and this is it. Welcome back. My name is Francis. I want to talk about the biggest lie that you've been sold. Your whole life, you've been told that self-worth is something that you earn, that it's tied to how successful you are, how you look, how many people approve of you. I mean, look at social media, right? That if you just work harder, got better, do more, then you'll finally feel like enough. But let me ask you, has that actually ever worked? Maybe you get the promotion, you get a raise, you get the relationship, you lose the weight. And for a second, maybe you felt good until the next insecurity crept in, until your brain says, okay, but now what? And that's because external validation is a bottomless pit. It's like pouring water into a cup with holes in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in it, it'll never be enough. It'll never fill that cup. Because real self-worth is not something you earn. It's something you own. You don't find it. You don't achieve it. It doesn't come from outside of you. It comes from within you. You remember it and you reclaim it. You decide it's already yours. So why don't you feel it? Because somewhere along the way, the world convinced you that you weren't enough. Low self-worth doesn't show up one day out of nowhere. It's learned. Somewhere along the way, you were taught through experiences, relationships, or even subtle messages from society that you weren't enough as you are. And maybe you were only praised when you performed well. You were criticized when you made mistakes. You felt invisible, like your needs didn't matter. Or you were made to feel like love had to be earned. So your brain took these experiences and locked them into a belief that said, I have to prove my worth. And so that belief runs your entire life. Maybe you over-apologize. You say yes when you mean to say no. You hold yourself back because failure feels like proof you're not good enough. You're always looking for that one thing that will make you feel worthy. But here's the thing. Self-worth is not a performance. It's a decision. And it's time to reclaim it. So I'll share briefly. I grew up in a household where criticism was really the default language. If I wasn't being corrected, I wasn't being seen. It was negative attention or no attention at all. And if you've ever lived in that kind of environment, you know how it messes with your head. Over time, I just adapted, like all kids. And when I came to the States, I was wild, loud, expressive, full of life. My father, bless his soul, never really enforced things like etiquette or quote unquote proper behavior. So I showed up at my aunt's house, cussing, acting a fool, completely unfiltered. And she shut that all the way down. Now, in a Caribbean household, discipline wasn't a gentle conversation. It wasn't, hey, don't do that, in a soft voice. It wasn't like coddling. It was a beatdown sometimes. And so I learned fast. I shrank. I silenced myself. I became the kid who was praised for being good, not because I was joyful, not because I was thriving, but because I was quiet, because I took up less space. And the world, it rewarded that. And so you get told that you're mature, you're well-behaved, you're easy to be around. But here's the truth. I wasn't any of those things. I was just terrified. That became my coping mechanism. I was living in constant fear of doing something wrong. So I questioned everything. Was I good enough? Was I smart enough? Was I worthy of love? Was I worthy of any of the goodness that was meant to come my way? And when you start questioning your worth, it doesn't stop at childhood. It follows you. It creeps into everything, your work, your relationships, the way you show up in the world. So I spent years letting those doubts run my life, letting them dictate every decision. And at the time, I thought I was being responsible, thought I was doing the right thing, being cautious, avoiding mistakes, playing it safe. That's what we're told to do, right? But here's the problem with that approach. It keeps you trapped because you can't play it safe and live a life that actually fulfills you. You can't shrink yourself and expect to feel whole. And one day it hit me. I woke up and I looked at my life, the life that I had built by following all the rules, by playing small, by doing everything right. And I realized I was miserable. Not just unhappy, I was sick. And something inside of me just said, you can't do this anymore. But did I listen? No, not at first, like most of us, right? We have to hear it a few times because change is terrifying, even when you know you need it. So I kept pushing, I kept grinding, I kept playing the part of the person I thought I was supposed to be until my father died. And everything stopped because when you lose someone, your entire perspective shifts. You start asking different questions. And the one question that haunted me the most was this: if I were to die tomorrow, would I be happy with the life I've lived? And the answer was no. And that like literally shook me because here's the thing. I believe in reincarnation, but even if I get another lifetime, this one still matters. This version of me, this story, this body, it's not something to just get through. It's something to live the hell out of. And that's what I want for you too. I know life has probably knocked you down a few times. I know that the world has tried to convince you that you're not enough, that you need to prove your worth, that you need to hustle for validation, that you need to be better before you're allowed to take up space. That's a lie. You don't need to prove your worth. You just need to remember it. You don't need permission to live. You need to stop waiting for it. And I get it. Change is terrifying. What if you fail? What if people don't approve? What if stepping into your power makes other people uncomfortable? Well, let me ask you this. What if you spend another year, another decade, another lifetime waiting to feel ready? How much more of your life are you willing to sacrifice by playing small? Because despite all the chaos, despite the pain, despite every single challenge you faced, living fully is your birthright. And it's time to reclaim it. And I want that kind of life for you. But the question is, do you? You just have to be willing to do what most people won't. So this is a part that most people skip when they're on this journey. You can do all the self-help work in the world. You can set boundaries. You can take risks, push through fear, but if you don't heal the wounds underneath, those old patterns will keep creeping back. The defense mechanisms that we hold on today, they didn't just appear out of nowhere. At some point, they were the only way we knew how to survive. So for me, shrinking and staying quiet wasn't just a habit, it was a shield. It was a way to avoid setting off more chaos at home. If I had taken up any more space, spoken too loudly, pushed too hard, it could have made things even worse. And I share this because I want you to understand something. How you show up today isn't random. It's a pattern, a coping mechanism, one that has kept you safe. And maybe in some ways it still does. But the real question is this: is it protecting you, or is it keeping you small? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do this while you're driving or operating heavy machinery. But anyway, so just close your eyes for a second. Picture yourself as a little kid, the version of you before the criticism, before the expectations, before the world told you who to be. What does that kid need to hear? Write them a letter. Tell them they don't have to prove their worth. Tell them they're already enough. They're already whole. And next time you hear that voice of self-doubt, don't fight it. Talk to it. Show it kindness, compassion. Reassure it like you would a child who just needs to feel safe again. Because self-worth isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to yourself. All right, so we're nearing the end. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. You were never broken. You were just conditioned to forget your worth. And the real healing isn't about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you've always been. In spirituality, many traditions teach that you are already whole, that you don't have to earn your worth. You just have to step into it. As Rumi said, you were born with wings, where I prefer to crawl through life. So the real question is, are you ready to stop crawling? Are you ready to trust yourself, take up space, and start living like someone who knows they're already enough? Because the world doesn't need a better version of you. It needs the real authentic you. Now, I know this is deep work. And if you're watching this thinking, I know I need to make these shifts, but I don't know where to start, I have something for you. I've created an 8-week coaching experience called Resistance Reset. It's designed to just help you break free from self-doubt, stop procrastinating, stop self-sabotaging, and really step into the most aligned, confident version of yourself. So together, we're going to learn how to stop letting fear and resistance control your decisions, build self-trust through aligned action, so no more overthinking and waiting for the right time, heal the deep-rooted patterns that are keeping you stuck, or at least know what they are. Enrollment is now open, but only for a limited window. You join now, you get 50% off. There are only 20 spots available, and you do need to apply. I'm keeping the group really small and intentional to create a deeply connected, transformational experience. And if this speaks to you, join the wait list now, and you'll get early access before enrollment actually fills up. The link is in the description below. And stay tuned for next week. We're actually going to dive deep into something most people actually don't talk about: the fear of joy and progress. Because once you clear all this mental and emotional clutter, once the resistance fades and you learn how to do the dance, once self-trust begins to take root, then what? If joy hasn't been a constant in your life, what will you do when it finally arrives? Because if you've watched the January series on resistance and you stuck with me through this deep dive into self-trust, self-sabotage, and self-worth, your life is changing. That's already happening. The question is, will you allow yourself to receive it? So my final takeaway is this. Remember, the mayfly gets one day, 24 hours. It doesn't waste it doubting itself. It just lives. You were born with 400 trillion to 1 odds. You weren't meant to shrink. You're meant to live. You don't need another decade, another year, because this life, it's happening right now. The only question is, are you going to step into it? Drop a comment and let me know what's one belief about your self-worth that you're ready to let go of. And if this video has spoken to you, hit the subscribe button, share it with somebody who needs to hear this message, because this is just the beginning. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the other side of change.